This is a 1997 Subaru Outback, and I'm going to be removing the in-dash stereo today. Now, long story short, the in-dash stereo is held in place by this bezel. This bezel, in turn, is held in place by this piece of plastic, which includes the gear shifter. Now, this piece of plastic, in turn, is locked in place by this piece of plastic. So we'll start by taking off this piece, and then this piece, and then finally this piece. Now, in addition, this bezel is also held in place by the ashtray and the cup holder, and those will all have to come out. Now, in order to release this piece of plastic here, we have to lift up that centerpiece, and there's two screws right there. Got to get those screws out. Okay, I just went ahead and removed them, and just a little bit of prying, we should be able to get this guy out of the way. Pull up the brake a little bit. And now that is out of the way. Now I can pry this guy up. Now that this guy's out of the way, just turn it sideways to get it around the gear shifter. Now, one thing that's important here, you're going to have to pull your gear shifter back, so use your brake to make sure your car doesn't roll away on you. In order to get enough room, you gotta like put it in first gear. Ashtray is pretty straightforward. It just pulls back and out. Has a little tab on it you press, and out it comes. The cup holder comes out, and it's actually you pull this entire thing. It's got a tab on it. Press that tab, slide it right out. And here the two screws are here and here. I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the cigarette lighter just to have that out of the way. Go ahead and these screws here. Now with those screws out of the way, this guy just pulls on out. I guess that would be the cup holder. Now the tricky part here is there are two screws under here where the ashtray was, right up in there. I'm going to need a really short Phillips head to get those out. Okay, and I've got such a short Phillips. This little guy right there is going to give me just enough room to work. Okay, there's one. Okay, and I got the other one. Now the bezel should be loose. And the only thing holding it on now are the wires to the cigarette lighter. There's two of them. We'll just go ahead and disconnect all that. I can't quite get it fully disconnected. There's probably another connector in here. I don't really want to mess with it because I might have trouble getting it back together, so I'm just going to leave it. It's out of the way though, so that's all we really need. Now, radio's held in by 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. And also, look down deep, there's 2 screws way down deep in there. I'm going to start with the 4 superficial screws. Let's be lazy. Okay, I've gone ahead and removed those 4 screws. But it's still being held in by 2 deep screws way deep in here. So I'm going to use this little handy-dandy device here. Just try to grab those screws so they don't fall, because if they fall, I'm never going to get them. Okay, I got the first one here. As you can see, handy little tool kind of grips it there, keeps it from falling in. Okay, there's number 2. Now, the radio should be loose. And out it does come. And it's held in with this little metal frame. A couple screws on either side. Let me get that radio out. Also got some wiring harnesses and things in the back. We have an antenna lead that must be disconnected. And we have a wiring harness. Okay, loosen that up a bit. And there it is. Take off those 2 screws and you'll have the radio in your hands. And screws removed. And out it comes. That's it. Radio completely removed, and obviously to put another radio in, you just simply reverse order. With these aftermarket radios, you typically are going to have to add on a wiring harness. This is a wiring harness I purchased. I think I got it at Best Buy, I don't remember. Anyway, this wiring harness goes to Subarus and a couple other brands. So you want to mate your radio to a Subaru, you're going to need a wiring harness. And what I did here is I soldered the wires together and I put heat shrink on them. That's really the best way to do it. Solder them and heat shrink them. That's give the best connection and make it the safest. Okay, so putting it back together is just reverse order. I'm going to go ahead and put the old radio, the original radio, back into this car. So we start by sliding it into its harness and putting those 4 screws in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we've got the screws put back in. Now we have to mate it up with the wiring harness and the antenna jack. Alrighty, I got the antenna and the wiring harness hooked up. Go ahead and slide it on in. And we got to put in the 2 deep screws and then the 4 superficial screws. I'm going to put in the 2 bottom screws here first, just to kind of hold things in place a little bit, so I can get in those deep screws a little better. Okay, now I put these 2 lower screws in. That helped line up the deep screws a little better. Now we're going to use our handy dandy little gripping screwdriver. See how that thing works. Slide it in there like that. Got a nice grip on it now. We stand a much better chance of not dropping it, and we kind of carefully work our way in there. We got that side in, and now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. This is the trickiest part of this whole procedure, are those deep screws. So easy to lose them. If they fall in back there, you're never going to get them. Okay, got them in on both sides. Now I'm going to go do the uppers. Okay, those 6 screws are now in place. Time to reconnect our cigarette lighter. And remount the bezel. Okay, got everything back in place here. Now we're going to put in the 2 screws here. I've put in these lower screws where the ashtray goes in. I have to put in the cup holder before I put in the upper screws. And now those 2 screws can go in. Now with the cup holder in and screwed in, we can now put in the cup holder. And there goes the cup holder, and now we can put in the ashtray. Then we have to put in the piece of plastic that surrounds the gear shifter lever. Pop it into place. And then, of course, that second piece of plastic which holds the first piece in place. The very last thing, of course, are these 2 screws, and that should do it. So we have the bezel locked in place by this piece of plastic, locked in place by that piece of plastic, locked in place by those 2 screws, and we can just go ahead and close that lid, and we'll give it a test. And it does light up. Okay, radio is working. Some might ask, why did I take out a good radio and replace it with the old original equipment radio? Well, that's basically because I'm going to be getting rid of this car, and I didn't want to lose that nice radio in the process. I may be able to put that radio in something else. That's it.